Good morning, everybody. Today is September 15th. I'm Dr. Vuong. Here's your quick COVID update. I want to talk about antibodies today and prior infection. The numbers are maybe leveling off a little bit. 159,000, 160,000 cases yesterday. Maybe that's where we'll be. I don't think so. I think we'll keep going up. I mean, if you look at the map of the United States, it's one big hot pandemic. The entire Northwest, Midwest, South Dakota is starting to take off. The hottest spot right now is West Virginia. Yeah, it's just heading that way. It's heading up northeast coast, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York. Broadway's opening up. We've got football. We got packed football stadiums, not only professional, but college, and I'm pretty sure high school football too. So these are pretty crazy super spreader events, which I want to settle some argument right now about whether or not, if you've had COVID in the past, do you have immunity? And the answer is, drum roll please, possibly, but we're not exactly sure. And the data's still coming in on this, but I think, let me give you just the major takeaway. Number one is, if you've had COVID in the past, you could probably think of yourself as being the equivalent of having received one dose of vaccination. Now, Dr. Vuong wrote this paper and that paper. It showed that people have had it, natural immunity. It has more antibodies. Yeah, blah 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 blah. Dude, it's one paper, one preprint. Man, it might not have even been a great study. Let me tell you what happened. So let's say before the vaccines were available, you caught COVID. Now, you're exposed to the entire virus, so you have an immune response. And let's say you recover. So you definitely have a wide spectrum of antibodies. Remember, it's not just one antibody. It's not a certain level of antibodies that gives you immunity. And there's two arms of the immune system. We're not quite sure yet which one's more important in this race against the coronavirus. So you have the antibody production, then you have memory cells, memory B cells, and then you have the whole T cell side with the T cell helpers, CD4 T cells, etc. And to my knowledge, last year, because we were in the middle of a freaking pandemic and we didn't know what we're dealing with, like when you got sick, your doctors really just tried to do their best to keep you alive. And some of the things that we learned, like we want to put off ventilators, we want to, have patients breathe on their stomach. That makes a difference. We tried everything, vitamin D, calcium, vitamin C, zinc. None of those really worked, made a difference. Initially, we gave monoclonal antibodies to the sickest people in the ICU because they were still really experimental. And then we realized that if you gave them earlier in the disease, which makes more sense, they're much more effective. So now monoclonal antibodies are given early in the disease process. And the other thing that was really interesting about this virus was we also learned that there were microthrombotic events. And so patients were getting clotting things. And so we started putting them on blood thinners and things like that, steroids, nebulizers. They threw a lot. No one stopped, to my knowledge, no one really stopped and said, hey, let's check what type of antibodies this person formed. So that opportunity was lost. And I'm going to tell you something else. And I'm going to give you an insider secret to medicine right now. Even if your doctor tried to test you for antibodies or your level of antibodies, there is a very, very good chance they didn't know what they were looking for. And they might have ordered the wrong test or wrote it up the wrong way, or there's also a very good chance that the lab tech didn't do the test properly or just followed what the doctor ordered without really understanding what they were ordering. So there's a very good chance that you got a test that said, yes, you have antibodies, which is not very helpful because that doesn't tell you, just having antibodies alone doesn't lead to lack of disease. Remember, what we're talking about is protection against this. So even if you had coronavirus in the past, it doesn't keep new coronavirus from landing in your nose and mouth, just like a vaccination. The only thing that we worry about is, will it prevent symptomatic disease? Okay, that's what's important. And the answer is, we don't know what level of antibodies corresponds to that protection. Does that make sense? So if you had coronavirus last year, then you were exposed to the entire virus. You probably have a wide variety of antibodies, and then stimulated T cell helper response, etc. Now, remember what I've always said to you. There's always two factors. There's the virus and the host. So the question becomes, okay, you got it, but how much of it did you get? Did you get a huge viral load? Were you really sick in the ICU? Did you get over it? Did you not even know you had it? Did you think it was your allergies? So let's say you had a very mild case of coronavirus. Is that because you got a small viral load, or is it because your immune system is so fucking amazing, Uncle Billy? You know, like, we don't know. And let's say it's a mild case. How good is your immune response? What was the opportunity that your body had to really build up an immune system to an immunity to the virus? Answers, we don't really know. We don't really know. I will tell you an interesting paper, though, that came out, I think it was from Germany, but it looked at immune protection in people who had prior disease, prior COVID, versus Moderna versus Pfizer against the Delta variant. And as we know, because it made the news, like the efficacy of the vaccinations have gone down with the Delta variant. So it turns out that if you had previous infection with coronavirus, your immunity against the Delta variant was about the same as vaccination. So there's something there. So I'm not dismissing the fact that if you've had it before, you probably do have some level of protection against catching it again. But we do know that people have caught coronavirus twice and 3 times. And we do know that people have died the second time. They survived the first time but died the second time. So I wouldn't walk around like I'm invincible just because I had coronavirus last year and survived it. I wouldn't be flying. I wouldn't be shunning masks. And the other thing is, the next point I'd like to make is that they actually did do a very good study looking at people who had previous infections of coronavirus, gave them 1 dose of the vaccine, and they ended up having a much higher response, more antibody response than 2 doses. Someone who has not had it and then 2 doses. So if I'm somebody who had COVID last year and survived it, I would highly recommend you go get vaccinated, because then you probably have the best case scenario. You'll probably have the best protection. Now that might change in time and future, and depends on is there such a thing as waning immunity? What level of waning immunity is good enough? Like, this is stuff that average people don't think about. This is what makes going to school and paying attention, important. Because, for example, people get all up in arms and they'll see a news report that says, the Pfizer vaccine is like down to like 85% effective or something like that. And they'll say, see, what's the point of getting vaccinated? Well, motherfucker, you don't know if 85% is, like, maybe that's good enough, right? Like, maybe if I could get everybody vaccinated and have 85% protection, that's good enough to stop this fucking pandemic. Who understands what I'm trying to say? So we don't know that yet, but we just read these headline news and we jump to conclusions. See, you can't make me get that jab. Like, what is wrong with you? That's not how this works, right? It might be good enough. And if you've had it before, get vaccinated and you'll be uber protected. Probably, I can't say that for sure, but it's kind of looking that way. And then if you combine like people who are vaccinated plus people who had prior COVID infection who get vaccinated, that might be enough to really protect like our young kids, that elusive herd immunity, which I don't think is that important. I mean, I wouldn't focus on herd immunity. I would just like get vaccinated. Just do your part, right? Like, come on, baby, just do your part. Go for it. And so the argument that, in summary, I'd like to say, when people go, I've already had it, I don't need to get vaccinated, That's partially true. You have some level of protection. We don't know exactly how good that protection is. We know people have died from catching it a second time. Why would you put yourself at risk when you have a very effective and safe vaccine opportunity? And, that's what I would say to people. The answer is you really just don't know. You really don't know. And you also don't know if that prior infection is going to protect you from a new variant or a new level of infection. Or you become one of these people who colonize it because you've got your super immunity and you spread it to other people because you're shunning masks. You're like, I've had it, I don't have to wear a mask. Like, yeah, you kind of do, because you need to protect those of us, the young kids, those people who can't be vaccinated, etc. So, and people go, I'll talk about this tomorrow probably, like, oh, it's endemic. You just got to live with it. Go live your life, doctor. I read some of these comments. It drives me nuts. Go live your life, Dr. V, blah, blah, blah. Dude, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. It's still a pandemic. It's still bad. It's bad all over the world. It's really bad in the United States. This is not the time to be going football games and concerts and Broadway. And I get it. I miss that shit too. I wish I could do it again. But not in the middle of a pandemic. Calm the fuck down. I love you very much. Be safe. See you again tomorrow for another COVID update.